Does China really control the U.S. economy? Some people swear China owns America because it holds U.S. debt. Others say that's just political drama. Every time there's a trade war, tariffs, or even a TikTok ban, everyone panics like China just pressed some secret button that says crash the U.S. economy now. But is this true? Is China actually pulling the strings? Or is this just one of those myths that refuses to die because it sounds juicy? Today, we're diving deep into the U.S.-China money relationship. By the end, you'll know whether China really has America on a financial leash, or if this whole China controls the U.S. thing is just an overhyped conspiracy. Spoiler, the truth is weirder, messier, and way funnier than you think. The myth China owns America. Let's start with what everyone thinks they know. China owns America. It's the phrase politicians throw around to scare you during elections. It's the headline that makes people click. It's also mostly wrong. The myth goes like this. China owns so much U.S. debt that it could destroy America by demanding repayment or selling it all off. Sounds terrifying, right? Yes, because obviously the U.S. just handed over the deed to the White House, California, and the Grand Canyon as collateral. Oh, here you go, China. Please be gentle. Here's the truth. China does hold a lot of U.S. debt, around $800 billion to $1 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds. That's a big number, sure. But the total U.S. debt, over $34 trillion. Do the math. China holds less than 3% of it. That's like lending your friend $30 while he owes $1 million to 50 other people. You're not exactly in control of his life. Most of America's debt is actually owed to Americans themselves, pension funds, the Social Security Trust Fund, U.S. banks, and domestic investors. So, no, China doesn't own the U.S. economy. At most, it rents a small corner of it. The reality? Who really owns U.S. debt? Here's where things get interesting. Who really owns U.S. debt? Well, first, let's clear up what this debt actually is. When you hear U.S. debt, you might imagine Uncle Sam handing out IOUs written on napkins. But no, this is about treasury bonds. These are basically government IOU notes sold to investors. They're safe, boring, and as exciting as a beige wall, which is why investors love them. Governments, banks, and even everyday people buy them because they trust the U.S. will always pay back. So who owns it? About 70% is owned by Americans, institutions, funds, and even you through retirement accounts. About 30% is owned by foreign investors, including countries like Japan, the UK, and yes, China. So technically, the biggest owner of U.S. debt is America itself. That's like owing yourself money and charging yourself interest. Genius. And the foreign share? The largest foreign holder isn't even China. It's Japan. But no one says Japan controls the U.S. because, well, that's not as clickbaity. So the next time someone says China owns America, remind them that the U.S. mostly owes itself. It's the financial equivalent of playing poker with your own money and still losing. Why China buys U.S. debt in the first place? Okay, but why is China buying all this U.S. debt anyway? Are they secretly plotting world domination? Are they hoarding it to pull off some master plan? Not quite. China buys U.S. Treasury bonds for three simple reasons. 1. Safe investment. U.S. bonds are considered one of the safest investments in the world. They're like the financial equivalent of grandma's cookies. Boring but reliable. China uses them to store its massive foreign currency reserves safely. 2. Keep trade flowing. China sells a ton of stuff to the U.S. Phones, clothes, electronics, you name it. When they earn dollars, they need to do something with them. Buying U.S. bonds helps keep that money working while stabilizing trade. 3. Control its currency. Sort of. Buying U.S. debt helps China manage the value of its currency, the yuan. When they invest in U.S. bonds, it supports the dollar, making Chinese exports cheaper for Americans. Translation, we'll lend you money so you can keep buying our stuff. Brilliant. So no, China isn't buying U.S. debt to own America. They're doing it because it's profitable for them, stabilizes their economy, and keeps the U.S. shopping. But hold up. The real story isn't just about bonds and IOUs. The U.S.-China relationship goes way beyond debt. When it comes to trade, rare earth minerals, and supply chains, the power dynamics get way more interesting and a little terrifying. Stick around because in the next part, we'll expose how the U.S. and China are stuck in an economic relationship so toxic, They make reality TV couples look healthy. The trade web, who needs who more? Now let's talk about the most complicated part of this relationship, trade. The US buys mountains of goods from China. Look around your room right now. Your phone, made in China. Your TV, made in China. That coffee mug, probably made in China too. Meanwhile, China relies on American consumers like oxygen. Without the US market, Chinese factories would have a serious identity crisis. It's like a couple that fights all the time but still shares a Netflix password because neither wants to pay for their own. This relationship is so intertwined that neither country can easily cut ties. Sure, they slap tariffs on each other sometimes, basically throwing financial tantrums, but in the end, they keep trading because they both need each other. The US needs cheap goods, China needs buyers for those goods. It's toxic, it's profitable, it's not going away anytime soon. The scare factor. Can China use debt as a weapon? Now here's a question that gets asked a lot. Could China crash the US economy by selling all its US bonds at once? Sounds like a powerful move, right? Sell off $1 trillion in US bonds, tank the market, and boom, economic chaos. But here's the problem. Doing that would also tank China's own investments. It would be like burning your own house down just to annoy your neighbor. Sure, they're uncomfortable, but so are you, and now you don't have a house. Also, the global financial market would freak out, sending shockwaves everywhere, including right back to China. So no, this isn't a doomsday weapon. It's more like holding a grenade with the pin out, dangerous for everyone, including the person holding it. So while it's fun to imagine China threatening, pay up or else, in reality, that else would hurt them too. The real leverage, it's not just about debt. If debt isn't the main way China could flex power, what is? The real leverage lies in supply chains and resources. Rare earth minerals. These are critical for making everything from smartphones to fighter jets. Guess who dominates the market? Yep, China. If they ever restricted exports, it would create a nightmare for tech and defense industries. Manufacturing power. China is the world's factory. During the pandemic, when supply chains broke down, the US realized just how dependent it is on Chinese manufacturing. Without China, many US industries would be scrambling. Technology battles. From 5G to semiconductors, there's an ongoing tech tug-of-war. The US accuses China of stealing tech, China accuses the US of blocking progress. It's a messy game of who controls the future. Forget the debt. The real control is when your iPhone proudly says designed in California, but secretly whispers assembled in China. This is where the power dynamic gets interesting. China doesn't have to threaten with bonds. They can just tweak supply chains, slow shipments, or change export policies to remind the world how much they matter. Why this relationship will never end. After all this, here's the truth. China doesn't control the US economy, at least not completely. But the US doesn't fully control its own economy either. Both countries are locked in a relationship that's part partnership, part rivalry, part economic marriage they can't divorce from. The US needs China's goods, manufacturing, and rare earth minerals. China needs US consumers, investments, and access to global markets. It's like two roommates who hate each other's guts but also know they can't afford rent without the other. Sure, they argue, but they also share pizza. No matter how many trade wars or political tensions flare up, they'll keep working together because neither can afford not to. So, does China control the US economy? Sort of. Not with debt, not with some secret master plan, but through a web of trade, resources, and mutual dependence that's way more complicated than headlines suggest. Before this video gets taxed, smash that like button, subscribe for more financial truths that school never told you, and comment below, who do you think really has the upper hand, the US or China?